So let's get started. I'm going to start out just by wetting my paper. And for this one, I want to make sure I get enough water on it because we're going to get a really nice wash. So I want, whoops, an even tone without any color. There's a couple ways to do this. You could just wet half the paper. You can see I have a sketch down. And I'm not worried about isolating the bird because I can lift off enough to have it pop off the page. But I do need to be careful of this line here so that I don't run too much in. And I'm using Aussie Red Gold, which is pretty assertive. So I'm going to go ahead and start a little bit above that line because I know it's going to spread. And I can just, without fear, go right across that bird. But what I do want to do is make sure now I just have clean water to pull that Aussie Gold up the page. And you can help it out a little bit while it's still wet. We don't need to worry about that. And you can even tip your paper a little bit to help steer that water down or make the pigment move. Okay. You don't want to overwork it too much. Once you feel like you have a pretty even wash, you just want to let it alone. I do see a little bit of a pinkish hue. So as I'm adding that on my horizon, I'm just going to tap it in here just to get us started. And then just like the other wash, I'll go ahead and I'll add clean water, which should pull it up. And again, using gravity as our friend, we can just help that wash go all the way down. And again, while it's wet, you don't have to worry too much. I just am looking for an even distribution of that pigment. And I can always go in on top and lay another color if it dries, although I am a little impatient. So for some reason my brush is being very assertive with the color. Let's see if we can't get a better distribution. And I'm just taking really even strokes across. And again, with a wash, you really don't want to overwork it, which I feel like I'm doing. So we're just going to let that dry and see what we end up with. And if I need to go back in afterwards, I can. Okay, and while I've got wet paper down here, I'm going to go in with our little rose of ultramarine. Gosh, I don't know why. Usually I'm a real fan of this Princeton brush, but it is being a little draggy. And so this is just the underwash. So again, I'm really just trying to move the color around. And I see in this water, not only this light color, but a little bit more purple. So I'm gonna also, again, at the horizon, go in a little heavier, trying to avoid that, what just happened, but I can lift that, so it's not too bad. I'm off camera. I'm just cleaning that wash brush off again because I just want to go in and make sure we have a nice differentiation. And we're going to have to add a little more red in here and go in. So what I'll do is I'll just glaze over once it dries with some of my quinacridone red. So I do need to let that dry a little bit. And while that's happening, I'm going to just take a little bit of clean water and try to lift a little bit of this body on this bird where I want to put where I want to add the phthalo turquoise. And I'm just going in with clean water and then I'm drying it off. I'm not as much worried about this area because I'm going to go on top with purple. So if it mixes with the yellow, it'll just muddy up, which will be okay. But that turquoise, I don't want to turn too green. So I'm just trying to give myself a little bit of leeway here. I'm leaving a nice little highlight area. Okay. I think we can work with that. Let's see how we do with the dampness. Since we only have 15 minutes, I do need to keep moving. So we're going to again use this rose color. And I just want to get a few of these strokes in there. Be careful with your water because I can see it is a little bit too wet still. And I'm getting a bloom outside of here. So let's go ahead and just remove some of that so that I don't get a big cauliflower there. That is the challenge with a 15-minute landscape. You don't have enough time to really let things dry. And I guess I could use a hair dryer, but kind of takes some of the spontaneity away from our process here. All right, so let's just kiss this area with a little bit of, we're not going to need much because here I can really spread it. And if I don't have too much water, I don't have any fear of it moving too far. And I just want to make some nice transitions from bird to wing so that we know it's good. So just moving that water around. I have a little bit of man overboard, so I'm just going to take a very tip and just keep that. I don't mind a little bit, but I don't want too much. Okay. So as usual, I try to have a predetermined palette. Here I mixed a few tones to try to figure out what I needed for those blends. And the answer was in the waves to mix Payne's gray with a little bit of the purple so that it's a nice transition. So I've done that in my palette. So let's see if we can get some of those going while we're waiting for the bird to dry. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to take our brush and go down with the belly and bring it up. And then I'll remove a little bit of pigment and I'm going to keep doing that just to get some of this surface. And I'm trying to use my whole arm, and I'm also trying to go with the line that I've kind of decided is my horizon so that it doesn't look too wonky. And some of these shapes are getting more blue and larger, so I can be aware of that as I move down. And it doesn't have to be exactly like the reference photo, and you can see I've got some blooms going here because I am working too wet. And that's okay. What I'm going to do is just drag it and we'll get these nice seams, and then we'll wait for it to dry. I'm not very patient, and that's kind of coming back to get me, but this will work out okay because we'll have some blends. But I don't want to work on this area anymore because I can see the cotton fibers starting to get irritated with me. So I'm going to leave them alone, and I'm going to make another attempt to do some of the larger ones down at the bottom. So I've lost my voiceover on this recording, so I'm just going to do an overlay. So I'm continuing to add the waves down here, and as I get to the edges, I just, right here, I just want to make sure that I'm interacting with them. As you can see, the reference photo goes off the page, and you want to do the same in your painting. You don't want to just paint everything in the middle area. That wouldn't make any sense. So make sure you go all the way through past your masking tape. Start outside of it and move it in. So I can feel here that we're getting too much blend in those waves, so I'm going to go ahead and move back to the bird, and now that it's dried a little bit, and work on that eye detail, which it's so small, all I'm really doing is adding a dot here. And then trying to capture the darker areas of the wings. And you can see it comes in as a hard line here, and I try to remember that we're painting a bird and its feathers, and so I want to soften that up. I'm not trying to draw hard lines. I want those nice, beautiful watercolor transitions. So just adding a little bit of clean water next to the dark line kind of diffuses it. So now when I add in the purple, I also try to remember these are feathers. And so I'm adding in a few of them individually from the outside in. And then paying particular attention to the direction in which they flow. And then I can kind of blend in the middle of it as I'm doing here. Just spreading out that color. With a small brush, you go in with some pretty heavy pigments, and you just have to move it around. And in the body, I'm showing you here that I try to follow the contour of the bird. Same with the wing. You can see I'm going in the direction which the wing is kind of moving or flowing. And that'll give your painting a feeling of movement. And remember here, we're not trying to give all of the detail. We're really just trying to show there's feathers, there's a wing. I'm going to do the same thing as I did at the top and blend in the Payne's gray here, just to get that nice edge that would happen against the sky. And then introducing the purple here or the rows of ultramarine, so that it's a companion to the other wing. Another technique you can do is add the color first and then pull it out, and that gives a nice linear texture. Whoops, and there I go dropping my brush, which I'm actually kind of glad it happened, because you can see how I'm going to attempt to repair it, and unfortunately it was a pretty assertive color there, so I can add water, but I'm trying not to mess up the nice even wash we spent so much time doing. And most of it lifted, which is pretty good. I already know I'm going to go in and glaze with the red over the bottom of that, so maybe some of it will get covered up. You don't want to go in with your water and leave it there, because you will get one of those blooms or cauliflowers. So I'm making sure to splot it after, or dot it, with the paper towel after I fix it. It's okay, really, when you make mistakes. I used to get worried about them. Now it's like, just roll with it. And as you can see, it's really not that terrible, so I'm not going to sweat it. Okay, so going back in, trying to add a little more value here so that we get some highs and lows. So I'm going in with the tip of my brush and just adding some of those feather details. And the wing is, obviously the thing that is connected to movement with the bird. So I'm trying to go in the direction that the wing does, and I'm trying to get a feeling of movement. The legs here, there's not much detail in the picture, so all I really need to do is have an area that's dark. Again, kind of following the contours. Which direction are the legs moving? How do they connect to the body? And where do the shadows need to go? And in this case, the legs are kind of right next to the tail feathers, so I can kind of blend all that together, and our eye will fill in the detail. I do like having a sketch first. It does give you a little bit of confidence. Where are you going? And I don't always do a lot of details on my sketch, but when I do sketch, I try to capture where the important lines are and where's the movement, so that my painting feels fluid. So hopefully that's coming across. Here I just need a little more shadow underneath the head area. Typically when something is against the sky, you're going to see a harder line. And of course the mix of the soft blended watercolor with the hard lines is what creates nice contrast in a painting. So, make sure you add the right shadows so that the bird feels like it has dimension, and it's a round bird, it's not flat. So we need to make sure we shadow the bottom half of it. And same is true for the top edges. And you can decide when to exaggerate things. Trying to keep things as a painting. I'm really not trying to have this look like the photograph. I'm just trying to give enough information so that it comes across as the bird in the sky, but that I can decide what to amp up and what not to. But my purpose here was to make sure the bird looks like it's in motion and is fluid. I'm just adding a few other details here on the wings and the tip, again to kind of stress that the bird is flying and you get the very tip of its wing. Testing just to see how damp am I still. And of course we've reached 20 minutes, so I'm past my 15-minute mark, but again, that was because of the wash. I'm learning at the same time, how long does this take? Because before doing YouTube videos, I've really never paid attention. I've just done a painting until it was finished. So here I'm adding the Quinacridone red to the horizon line, and I'm going to try to glaze it up into the Aussie red gold, which was my sky color. And now that that paint is dry enough, as you can see, it's not moving or blending or adding those blooms. So I can just drag some more water over it and it'll behave like it did initially. I'm being careful not to go over the purple because I would drag that across as well. So just trying to go into the bottom and make sure that they are blending. And I'm seeing now I need a little more yellow so that I get a nicer transition. Oh, actually, I'm adding a little bit more of the Quinacridone red because I could see that striated through the sky in the reference photo. So I'm trying to add, using the brush, drag it along so that I get some of those linear marks. And as it dries, it'll continue to blend in. So I'm not so worried that it looks like a hard line there because I know that'll soften up as it dries. Plus, watercolor dries lighter than you paint it, so it should blend in seamlessly. And I've already covered up one of my mistakes there at the bottom. So I just have that one left. So it worked out okay. Be careful not to add too much water because you definitely will get those blooms. And where in some of the backgrounds you want that texture, in this particular reference photo, it's a really nice even wash. So I'm trying my best to capture that. Just softening in that transition a little more. Realizing I need a little more of the purple here because the red was so abrupt. And as you can see, they blend pretty nicely together because, of course, the red and the purple are next to each other on the color wheel. And that's really enough to imply that there's a transition from the sky into the water. And because it's a horizon that's so far away, it doesn't have to be as hard line. The waves that we're adding will kind of do that job for us. So I decided to use this brush instead of my other one to see what kind of effects I'm getting. Sometimes with a horizontal effect, it works pretty well. Here, it was so wet because I had just done it. I'm really struggling with our timing since I'm way over time now. So going into the drier area, adding those darks, the waves, and you can add as many or as few as you want. You really just want to get across that it's water. And no one's going to be comparing your painting to the reference photo, so it's really, how do you interpret it? I'm just mixing up a little more of that Payne's gray with the purple because I ran out of my palette. And then just varying my strokes to get some of the thinner lines that I can see in the reference photo. And actually by adding those, even though my other waves are a little more blurred or blended, I feel like we are getting across the idea of this being water and it having waves. And that is our goal. So I can go in a little darker, which is what I'm doing now, is just mixing a little more of that Payne's gray in there. So I can tell I need a little bit more of these dark tones, so this is working well, and I can just add layers until I feel like I've gotten across the idea of water, and it's just now starting to feel like that to me. So I've gone back to the original technique where it's lay the belly of the brush down and bring it up, and here I'm just reinforcing that. As you work toward the edge, make sure to interact with the masking tape so that you're not just working in the middle. So I decided to try to fix this mistake by adding another bird. And, you know, poetic license. We get to do that as an artist. So I'm just going to pretend there's a bird way out in the horizon, and I'm just going to add that in there. So again, this wasn't in the reference photo, but it's a way that I could fix that mistake I had. So let's see what we have. Oh yes, I love the clean edge that the masking tape leaves, especially with a wash. It's just so pretty. So I'm happy with that. If you painted along, I hope you had fun. If not, I hope you enjoyed watching and you learned something. Please let me know in the comments what else you'd like to see. And please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video.